Hey y'all, in case we haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Madi Cheever. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, a diabetes specialized coach, and the proud owner of a not-so-functional pancreas. I'm also the face and founder of Type 1 Type Fun, a diabetes education and advocacy company on the mission to make Type 1 less overwhelming and way more empowering. If you're tired of confusing advice, craving real-life strategies, and ready to feel more confident in your blood sugar game, you're in the right place. We're turning burnout into breakthrough, backed by science, good vibes, and a whole lot of fun. Are you ready? I sure am. Let's do this. So, explaining carbs, insulin, and blood sugar to a kiddo is a big challenge. But what if you could turn all that into a video game? Yep, grab your controllers, because today's guest is turning diabetes education into something that's actually fun to play. Sam Glassenberg is a gaming expert who's worked on everything from blockbuster entertainment to life-saving medical simulation. But when his own daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, he hit start on the most personal project of his life, Level 1, a mobile game designed to help kids and their families understand and manage diabetes together. So whether you're a parent, a healthcare pro, or just love hearing about tech that makes a difference, this episode is for you. Let's press play on Level 1, a free mobile game that helps new T1Ds and the people who love them learn diabetes management. Sam, thank you so much for being here with me. I'm so excited to chat. Would you tell us a little bit more about how your daughter being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes influenced the creation of this video game? And if you don't mind as well, how old was she when she was diagnosed?
Sure. So it all happened when my daughter was 5 years old. So it was 5 years ago. She's 10 now. Yeah, it was very sudden. On Friday, my life is normal and, my primary job is running video game companies. And then on Saturday, that becomes your second job. My first job is now I'm a pancreas, responsible for injecting a lethal drug, insulin, into my daughter many times a day. So the whole onboarding experience was very overwhelming. I'm a Stanford trained computer scientist. My wife she's actually a pediatrician, and it took us many, many, many months to really understand how to manage this disease. I have this image that sort of demonstrates what that experience was like. This is what they give you at probably the best children's hospital in the Chicago area after 48 hours in the hospital. This is what I call your guide to not killing your own kid. You've got the it's scratched out insulin to carb ratios and insulin sensitivity factors and rounding rules and only give a correction dose if it's been at least 3 hours since the last rapid acting insulin. Like none of this makes sense off the paper. Eventually, after, a year of trial and error on your own, practice on your own kid or on yourself, you figure it all out. And so I thought, this is stupid. We need to fix this.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I think that a lot of individuals have gone through those similar feelings of overwhelm. So thank you for validating that too. It's, I think, really helpful to know that unfortunately or fortunately, we're not alone.
Yeah, I actually wrote up a blog or wrote up more of a diary early on because what I realized is, coming from video game development, in the video games industry, we've gotten very good at figuring out, how to deliver an incredibly fun, engaging experience that's like easy to get into and fun to play. We give you early wins and then it keeps you engaged for a long time. And what I realized was in those first few weeks was that the onboarding experience for type 1 diabetes actually takes probably about a dozen or 2 dozen rules around how to make a great game and flips them upside down to make the most punishing, unforgiving, like confusing experience possible.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay, so if we may for a sec, I think you have to give us some more background when it comes to your history of developing video games, right? You've created some really big games for big movies, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I started my career actually at LucasArts, making Star Wars games. So my first job out of college was flying Star Wars spaceships. For I
The
literally
dream.
like I animated cutscenes for Episode 2 video games. I used to manage a game technology team at Microsoft for a number of years, and then ran a company that did games for all the big Hollywood movies. So Hunger Games, Mission
Wow.
Impossible, Rocky. We're talking like tens of millions, hundreds of millions of players.
Oh my goodness. I think should I bow when we end this? Should I bow to you?
What are you
This is
talking? It's video
incredible.
games.
This is incredible. I think it's
There's
so
me and
awesome.
like 100,000 other people are making the games that you're playing.
You are fantastic. And I think I want to know a little bit more about the insight of this game for anyone who might not know. What can you tell us about it?
So the game is called Level One,
Okay.
and the idea is when this happened, I was like, we've got to replace the this. And one of the things that video games are extremely good at is helping your brain develop a mental model of a complex system. So what is diabetes? It's a complex system. It's glucose dynamics. Eventually your brain starts figuring it out, but games are really good at this, whether it's understanding how a city works or training your brain how to predict, the trajectory of an angry bird or parabolic flight. Like games train your brain to understand complex systems. And diabetes, you also develop a mental model of a complex system and you do it through play. But that play is usually on yourself or on your loved one as you figure it out by trial and error. And so we said that's silly. So we replaced it with a video game. So it's called Level One. It launched like a couple weeks ago. And basically it fixes the problem. You play this game, it's super simple, it's super fun, very relaxing. You play it with one thumb, and it explains every major concept in type 1 diabetes. There's like over 60 levels. Each one takes 2 to 3 minutes to play. Everything carb ratios, ketones, ISF, exercise, different foods, digestion rates. You just learn it from playing a super fun video game. It's a combination. We say it's a combination particle puzzle and rhythm game. So it's inspired by games like, Frost, Feed Me Oil, Where's My Water, Missile Command, Missile Defense, Guitar Hero, that sort of thing.
That's amazing. And so, okay, I have 2 questions. First question I think is a little, less complex. What is there an age, limit or like the lowest age that someone can start playing this game? A recommendation maybe?
So we've made the game to have the lowest sort of possible reading level, but fundamentally, like we can't avoid saying carb ratio. Like you need to be able to do division in order to play the later levels. But we've had, 6-year-olds play and they get a bunch of the concepts, like they get, highs and lows and how to manage them. It's the math gets a little bit tricky. And of course, as you sort of see with the visual style in the game, we've chosen a visual style that's very, I don't want to say Candy Crush, but like very casual. So it's reminiscent of games that are played by broad audiences, the kinds of games that are played by, everyone from, grandparents to children.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, visually it's incredible. And so I want to connect a dot here. You said that there's a lot of complex medical topics broken down into challenges in this game. So what was the challenge for you when it came to translating those complex medical concepts like carb counting, insulin dosing, carb ratios into an engaging game and maybe potentially for a younger audience?
So for the last 10 years, 5 years, 5 years before my daughter was diagnosed, I've been running a company that makes video games for doctors. It's called Level X. And so we've been, for over a decade, have been figuring out how do you take complex medical concepts and help train doctors' brains, whether it's, diagnosing a difficult diagnosis or diagnosing a rare disease. That's a puzzle game. Managing and treating a complex patient, that's a strategy game. So for 10 years, we've been finding ways to basically, how do you take what are complex concepts and use relatively simple game mechanics to help people develop mental models of these complex systems. How to manage a ventilator is a rhythm game. And so we've had a lot of practice. And with diabetes, I think it's a unique thing because the the patient really becomes the almost like the healthcare professional. The patient is responsible for a level of their own care that is just totally unheard of in any other. Like, when else do you have to, like, inject a lethal drug into yourself in very precise doses with every meal and with every action and just once in a while? Because why not? Like, I'm not familiar with any other disease that works this way. So in many ways, like, you kind of become the I would say endocrinologist, but diabetologist. And so, the race was on essentially to be like, okay, well, after, a year or two of dealing with this in my head, I had this mental model of how it works. And okay, what are the right mechanics that we want to bring together so somebody can develop that mental model, not in a year or two, but in an hour or two. And that's where, this combination of, particles and particle puzzles, humans love particle puzzles. I think, something like there's lots of different examples, but I think there's, about 1 billion people play these games. Um, the human brain we love playing with magnetic sand. We love playing with water because we love these kinds of interactions. And so taking advantage of that with insulin and glucose was one angle. But then there are other elements like, dosing and pre-bolusing. That's a rhythm game. And, if you think about games like missile defense, where you're not trying to shoot where the target is, you're trying to shoot where the target is going to be, which is a lot of what comprises the challenge of managing type 1 diabetes. So, sort of finding these patterns in games people are already playing and then bringing them together to create something that is fun and really helps you figure out this very complex thing very quickly.
Wow, that's incredible. And I had a question that I came up with while you were saying that, and I think you kind of answered it. But my question was going to be a bonus question: is what do you think if you had this game, if you could play this game when your daughter was diagnosed, what do you think the difference would have been for you? Like, would it have taken that year? Would it have taken only a few months, a few weeks? Like, what do you feel you would have been
I would have
compared?
figured this out in hours. Like,
Okay, wow.
the reason I built this is I really felt I needed it. Like, it took me it takes weeks to understand things like insulin stacking. Like, think about all the stuff on that page, right? Only give an insulin dose if it's been at least 3 hours since the last rapid acting insulin dose. Hold on. My kid's at 400 and I gave her half a unit 2 hours ago. That means I'm not supposed to give her insulin now? What does that mean? But in the game, we actually have levels that teach you about this because if you know, like, the way it works is, in the game itself, there's let me pull up a quick example. Basically, there's, the insulin coming up the side and, sort of see it coming up the side and it moves more slowly than the glucose does. So you'll be sitting there, food will come in, it'll slowly digest it'll digest and you'll see the sugar entering the system quickly and the insulin takes a while. That's why you want to pre-bolus. But what happens is the insulin is still hanging out there 4 hours later as it makes its way in because the action curve is slow. So it's understanding there's a whole levels where you're high and then we have you dose insulin and we're like, did you notice there was already insulin in the system? Now you're low. And so you're able to learn that, but not learning it by putting your kid in hypo or yourself in hypo or DKA. Ketones was another one where, like, I did not understand ketones because I was like, well, hold on a minute. You mean to tell me that, like, she hasn't been drinking anything. There's, like, not a lot of sugar in her system. Her blood sugar is normal, but there's still these things that are forming in her body because she's sick that are, putting her at risk. What is that? And so the beauty of it is, like, this game is played entirely with one thumb. All you do is just dose insulin. But ketones just play as part of that. Like, it's just part of the, um, there's just there's like a section in the game. There's like 4 or 5 levels with ketones where now instead of just, dosing for the food that comes in and then putting in juice if you go low, now you have to push both buttons. You have to put juice in and then put in insulin because you have to constantly keep this stuff going through your system so you have enough insulin in your system to destroy the ketones. Anyway, these are the kinds of things that,
Homeostasis.
yeah, you otherwise just don't. You only learn when you're sick and you screw it up.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate you explaining that. It sounds like there's an exponential difference that can happen, which could be life-saving, really. And do you mind if I ask, does this game also cover insulin pumps, closed loop systems? Will it eventually if it doesn't?
Not yet, not yet. We've had
Okay.
a lot of asks for it. So really what we've been focusing on here is MDI, sort of that first 6 months where, usually they won't even give you a pump for 3 to 6 months because they want to make sure that you always know how to fall back to injections. But we've been having a lot of requests for, hey, I want to learn about how do I use a pump or how do I use a closed loop system without having to make the investment of putting the thing on. And, you know, again, I don't want to learn this on myself. And so
Yeah.
that's one of the things that we're looking at incorporating into level one. Essentially, the beauty of like a closed loop system is literally you'd be sort of setting it up to play the game for you. 'Cause that's what
Okay.
it is.
Okay. Yeah. And another question that comes to mind, I'm kind of a what if person. So, my question is, what if someone with diabetes experiences something different than what they see in the game?
You're supposed to. So in the game, it's very explicit. Like, these are the numbers that we're using here, but they are going to change and they're going to be different for you. Your doctor may give you a different target range. Definitely your ISF and your carb ratios and everything else is going to be different than what's in the game. And so it's very like in the game, we change those numbers a lot to show you like, oh, this is totally dynamic. But also the game is explicitly clear. This is not like, these are not your numbers. Ask the doctor for your numbers. And of course, it's, diabetes. It's like you do the same thing, the exact same thing. You eat the same thing and dose the exact same thing for 3 days and get totally different results. So there is still that element of randomness. And that's diabetes.
Yep, you got to be prepared for the wind to shift. Something like that, at least. Okay. So, and I know that you said that you have already launched. So, what feedback have you been getting from the diabetes community?
So first off, before we launched, the feedback was overwhelmingly, why haven't you launched this yet? So I feel guilty because actually we've had this game in beta for like a good portion of a year, and the feedback we were getting from endocrinologists and diabetes educators was like, "What's wrong with you? Like, why haven't you? We need this now." Like, we had to, I think, take a few people off the beta because they were sharing it with their patients when they weren't supposed to. Like, it was, "What's Sam? Get it out there." So now it is, and you can just look online. Like the feedback has been just heartwarming. Everything from, I've had this disease for 5 years and I learned something new in the first 20 minutes to like, I cried when I saw the trailer. We had one the other day. My 12-year-old was just diagnosed 2 hours ago. We're playing the game in the ER. So, it has just been, first of all, it's heartwarming, it's gratifying, it's also a big relief of the guilt that we were feeling that I had this game almost ready to go and just hadn't launched it yet. So I'm very happy to have it out there.
Wow, congratulations. It sounds like some overwhelming, amazing feedback. And I was going to ask, do you see level one being integrated into formal diabetes education or healthcare programs? I know you mentioned endocrinologists.
Well, first off, through our partners like Beyond Type 1 and Breakthrough T1D Play, we are working on getting it integrated into onboarding kits and things like that. There's the Beyond Diagnosis campaign with Beyond Type 1. There's the bag of hope and variations of it with Breakthrough T1D. On the professional side, so as we've been through this whole process of developing the game and talking to people, we've realized like how much need there is that I hadn't even thought of. So one is something like half of the type 1 diabetics in the United States are treated by primary care because they're in like a rural environment. Um, Most primary care they don't know this stuff as well as endocrinologists. Um, and not to mention even like anesthesiologists will put patients under who are on insulin pumps. Like, how do you manage glucose during surgery? So these are all things that are, that like come into play. So we've actually had pressure to go and get it CME accredited. So that way doctors can earn continuing education credit from playing level one. We haven't done that yet, but it's on the roadmap. And of course, but yeah, the game is free to everybody. So
Wow. Oh my goodness, that would be so fantastic to see. And I was going to ask too if you're envisioning this going into other chronic diseases or potentially, yeah, the different population instead of the type 1, maybe it's someone who's taking care of those with type 1.
yeah, the main audience for this was patients and caregivers. Like part of the reason I needed it was even though like I knew how to manage the disease, it still takes a village. There's grandparents and aunts and uncles and kids you have sleepovers at and camp counselors and school nurses and teachers and all these babysitters. Yeah, for the last year or so, I haven't let anyone babysit my daughter unless they've played at least through level 10. So yeah, I needed this, and it's very clear that it's there are lots of people involved in the care of type 1 diabetes and need to know how it works besides the people who have it.
Absolutely. And do you see it ever evolving into other chronic diseases, or maybe there's other video game creators who have that personal and special connection to someone else with a different disease state?
I definitely think so.
Cool.
Type 1 diabetes is not the only chronic disease where the patient experience is terrible and where patients are confused and overwhelmed and don't understand what's going on. And like we said, games are the best way to learn something, and especially when it involves something complex. When you get a new phone, you don't read the manual. I don't think these even come with manuals anymore. They just, you go, I got to play with it, right? Because humans learn through play. And so I think my hope is that level 1 will be at like an exemplar, sort of flagship of how to do this with a community. This happens a lot where like type 1 diabetes is sort of like the first community that figures it out, and then everyone else, follows on. And I think hopefully this will be another just example of how video games can help out chronic disease communities.
I love it. I love it. And to confirm, did you say that level 1 is free?
Yes. Oh yeah. No, level 1 is totally free. Totally free. There's no in-app
Oh, cool.
purchases. There are no subscriptions. There's no hidden anything. The game is 100% free. You cannot spend,
Okay.
$2 to get an extra in-game juice box. The game is free. This is very much a passion project for the team at Level X involved here. Like, the reason we did this is because we wanted to make sure that, going forward, no patient or parent ever has to deal with this again. Or, learning how to manage this disease through practicing on themselves or someone they love. This is free. Free.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic. So I think there's no other option. We have to make sure that we know everyone knows where to find and how to download this app, right?
Yeah.
Can
So
you
it's
tell us
very
more?
easy. It's level 1 ONE. So it's available in the Apple App Store, in Google Play. Just search, level 1 diabetes. You can also go to playlevel1.com. That's, ONE, playlevel1.com, with links to everything. And there's also, videos and trailers and more info about the game.
I love it. Thank you. That's it for today, my friends, but the fun doesn't stop here. If you liked this episode and want more real talk diabetes support, come hang out with me on social. Just search Type 1 Type Fun, all words, or head to type1typefun.com for tools, tips, freebies, and real-life resources you can actually use. And if this episode made you laugh, learn, or feel a little more seen, feel free to leave a comment, give it a like, share it with someone you love. But until next time, live empowered, be silly, have fun, and eat some carbs.